So one of the questions that we have been getting lately is, what about code changes? First of all, what we've done is we've asked Dr. Mario Fucinari to join us again this week to just kind of talk about code changes. Dr. Fucinari, when do these ICD-10 code changes take effect?
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Mark, for having me back again. So, number one, keep in mind that the fiscal year for 2021, as far as the government and therefore the World Health Organization is concerned, begins October 1st. So ICD-10 codes change October 1st, CPT codes change January 1st, HCPCS codes change January 1st.
Okay, so most of the changes that we really are going to address today are going to be ICD-10 or the diagnosis codes. It seems like we're running into these changes, pretty much every year. What's going on? Were they not comfortable with the 76,000 or whatever it was that they had to begin with, or what's going on with that?
Well, I always say one thing that's constant is change. And so, basically we went from 17,000 ICD-9 codes, which nobody used 17,000, the good old days. Then we went to 70,000, now we're at 76,000. And they keep refining it. And, Mark, it's not just the World Health Organization, because they frankly don't care anything about your reimbursement, because only in the United States do we use that, but it's the carriers. And, keep in mind that ICS, Facebook, mail blasts, email blasts and whatnot, as well as my, facebook.com /Ask Mario, as things become apparent with the payers, they usually just adopt this, but there are subtle changes even this year. And so as those become apparent, then this is the way we can let everybody know. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, obviously we're in ICD-10. Hey, by the way, Mark, one thing I don't know if you know, in 2023, we're supposed to go to ICD-11. Okay. Dream on. It ain't happening. Okay. All right. We were supposed to go to ICD-10 in 1995 and 2015. So you and I, we're going to be, fertilizer under the tomato plants by the time they come out. Okay. There's two code systems. And, I actually hear some people teaching about the PCS, it's ICD-10 CM and, which means clinical modification. That's what you use in your office. Okay. So, the main thing is the reason why they're becoming more and more specific, because keep in mind that the World Health Organization, they use these codes for data analysis, mortality, morbidity. In other words, why are people dying and why do they have issues here? That's how they come out with, how many people have polio and everything else here. So unspecified codes here, those codes are just poor, and you should try to avoid them, because cervicalgia, lumbalgia is kind of like, what are they? And it's a code you would never use in a report of findings, you see. And so, keep in mind, the only time you're supposed to use an unspecified code is when the medical record, like, you don't know any better, and I say this because I actually took a course on ICD-10 changes for 2021, and they spent over an hour just talking about getting rid of unspecified codes. And so you can't do that. And you can always identify an unspecified code because they normally will end in a 9 or a 0, but also they describe symptoms or signs, okay? Like cervicalgia. Even this is Blue Cross. They said that cervicalgia is a non-specific in origin or nature, and it's basically, they have neck pain. That's all we know.
Let me jump in really, Doctor.
Yeah,
let me jump in really quick on the cervicalgia example. We actually have received some phone calls from members who are now getting rejections from insurance companies when they're including unspecified codes in their diagnosis series. So I just thought I'd mention that we're seeing this impact our doctors on reimbursement. And that's one of the reasons why the specificity is so important.
Yeah, yeah, I've been saying for years, get off of it, and it's because of the excludes things, signs and symptoms, again, it's only if you don't know anything, but there's excludes 1 and excludes 2, which most people have no clue what that means. But excludes 1, it basically, the way I tell, look at the bottom there, are you sure you're in the right place? It's like, use this code or this code, don't use both together. Okay, so excludes 1, you pick 1, and that's why there are certain codes in the big boy book, $125 book there, that nobody looks at. Excludes 2 is kind of like diabetic neuropathy and diabetes go together because they go together, and so examples would be like thoracic disc disorders. Excludes 1 means only use 1 code. It's one or the other. So a thoracic disc disorder you wouldn't use with lumbar radiculitis, which is a pinched nerve, because the disc disorder is more specific, you see. Other things, like cervicalgia, and what you just said, Mark, which of course you're always right there. And so, it's like cervicalgia, what does it do to? Here it's due to a disc disorder. So use the disc disorder is what it's saying, not cervicalgia. And that's why these companies are kicking it out, just like sciatica, you're going to use sciatica, but not due to a disc disorder, you see. So that's why, sprains, trauma codes there, sprain and strain are 2 different entities. Sprain supports your manipulation, strain supports your soft tissue work, okay? And that's where that all comes from, Mark. Now, keep in mind that in a trauma code, you have the AD and S at the end there. That is the phase of care. And that was the second portion, second third of the class here, is kind of like, you got to use the right phase of care in a trauma code. So A is active care, initial, not just the initial encounter, but it's like the initial phase of care. Then it goes to the healing or recovery phase. That is your rehab. Okay, so if you have a trauma code, the codes, when you go into rehab and start rehab, which you should rehab your patients, then use a D. And then we have S, which is a sequela, and we don't use S too much, okay? So, in addition, there's 463 new codes. There's 53 that have been deleted and everything else, and I'm not going to bore you with every single chapter because some of those typical chiropractor doesn't even use, okay? So just, to make everybody, nice and happy here, 490 new ones, 47 revised and everything. And keep in mind, these already took effect, okay, October 1st. So number one, what's the biggest thing? It's like, if you were in Back to the Future movie and Doc would say, whatever you do when you go back in time, don't go back to 2020, because it's like, it's been one of those years. Well, why has it been such a year? Fires and everything else. But of course, coronavirus, COVID is the big one. So now what they said is, if somebody reports, hey, I had this, before you had to say, well, where's the report that shows it? Now it says, if the patient self-reported the documentation, you can use that in your diagnosis, okay? But don't say like a sprain. It's more like, if I have rheumatoid arthritis, you take your patient's word for it. That's what this means here. And then, as I said, coronavirus, well, there it is. And you might want to look at this, not that you're treating it, but it is definitely a complicating factor. I just read today where they said now it kind of sits dormant in the intestine, heart and all that. So U07.1, that is coronavirus, okay? So put that into your computer system, okay? All right, so, in our limited time that we want to have here, when you look at Chapter 13, which is our bread and butter, the M codes, they named it after Mario, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, Mark, but the M codes there, M00 to M99, there's 57 new ones there, and they really look back what I said here. Other specified joint, not elsewhere classified, those are all synonyms for unspecified codes, and they just went and hammered that. It's like, get off of it, okay? So some of those things that you should add in, and by the way, Mark, since we're talking about it, I'm glad you asked it, that one of the doctors that I was talking to said, well, I'll wait for my software company to upgrade, the codes. Dream on, okay? You're smoking a bong, okay? So the key is, you need to upgrade these. So these are new codes here, okay? These are like, just tell me what I need to know, Mario. Okay, here it is, the M05.7 A, 8A, 0A, 8 A there, those things there, the 06 and so forth, it's rheumatoid arthritis. With rheumatoid factor, yeah, you look at their lab report, okay? But, keep in mind, like the bottom one, M06.8A, is that a good code? Other specified rheumatoid arthritis, other specified site, which means like it's somewhere else, dream on, okay? So rheumatoid arthritis, okay? If you do functional medicine, this is a big thing. Rheumatoid arthritis orthopedically affects the cervical spine too. Juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, there's 4 new codes now. And so, you have the unspecified ones as well. All right. But, take that with a grain of salt. But primary osteoarthritis, that could be a complicating factor. So here you go. And, that's the M19 codes. Okay. Now, headaches. Now, keep in mind, like G44.201 tension type headache, cervicogenic cephalgia, those things haven't changed. There's a whole bunch of migraine type headaches. Is it migraine headache with aura, without? Those are the G43 to 44 codes. But then there's symptoms, and the R codes are like symptom codes, like R51. Well, they deleted it. It's like, wait a second. There are other headache codes, so why should we have this? It's redundant. This is just a symptom, and you're not supposed to do symptoms at all. Now they added in instead R51.10, headache with orthostatic component, but you see that NEC? What does that tell you? Unspecified, okay? R51.9, headache, unspecified. They also added in a few others. Now, there's a lot of different changes, but this one here, it's disorders of the ligaments. You'll see here, contracture, ankylosing here. These are all new codes of things, but a lot of them are like pain and other specified joint. You're not going to typically use that. But disorders of ligaments, there's a lot of unspecified codes. Probably one of the biggest things would be with TMJ disorders. So the M26.6 is deleted, and now it's M26.64, 641, 2, 3, and 9. So of course 9 is an unspecified joint, but this is arthritis of the TMJ, okay? So if, number one, you can auscultate the TMJ, you can also look at imaging here. Arthropathy of the TMJ, here's some more codes. So again, they took that M2665 and now it's more specific type of a code here, okay? So you can look at that as well, okay? All right.
So, Doctor, one of the things that we saw when they introduced ICD-10 was the advent of things like injury due to spacecraft and some crazy ones. But since then, we've seen other things come up. We see a lot more of the birds and things where you can actually rent scooters in cities and enjoy time. But what if one of my kids gets hurt riding on their hoverboard? Have they addressed that at all?
Well, yeah, and I hope you are recovered from that abduction by the aliens, by the way. So I heard about that. So, these are called external cause codes. External cause codes are PI, work comp, VA, and some accident policies. Okay. So like a famous accident policy has a duck as a mascot, Aflac, remember that? And so, but they've added in, interestingly, just kind of anecdotally, these codes here for an electric scooter, hoverboard, Segway. I like this, the last one there, codes for fall from colliding with stationary object, and that's what these would be here. Pedestrian on standing, micro mobility pedestrian. So obviously, these type of injuries, we have the electric bikes now and all that, and so they have to add in more codes. Okay, there's a plethora of codes there. I like that term there. And so we've gone over, just kind of like, hey, guess what? This is coming. It's here now. And, be aware of it too. For the entire list, which there's more, 12 pages of them, but we went through the highlights here. Again, if people want to, they can go to askmario.com and, use Save 5, and then they can get a book if they choose to. Okay. If you have questions, always ilchiro.org, but doc at askmario.com as well, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Okay. Anything else, Mark?
Good. I thank you so much for joining us and bringing us up to date on the code changes. And we truly appreciate it in Illinois. Hope you're enjoying your warm weather.
And watch out for those aliens. Okay. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.